What I didn't know is way above me at the top of this megachurch is there was a theological split going on at the top level of leadership of
Okay.
what do we think about hearing from God and the Holy Spirit and expressing that, like how does that all work? We basically got to the place where they were like, this is not how we want you leading. We don't want this going on. And so they basically kicked us out. And it was probably the best thing that ever happened to us.
Hey, friends, welcome back to the Receive Experience podcast. I'm Tyson Bradley, and today's story is kind of crazy, but it also reminds me just how faithful God is and can be in our lives. Because today I'm going to be talking with Richie Christie. He is a former Megachurch youth pastor who took his youth ministry from like 50 youth to 250 plus in a pretty short period of time. And it was growing because he was actually listening to God and helping others do the same. Go figure. And as these hundreds of young people were coming closer to God, they were experiencing real transformation. They even had moments of healing. But because it didn't fit the system he was in, they chose to fire him. Now, part of this was his fault and he'll admit it. But if you are struggling with feeling like others aren't aligned with hearing God, or if following Jesus doesn't make sense to the people around you, then this conversation will be helpful. Because sometimes what feels like rejection is actually God's redirection. And you're going to hear Richie talk about his experience. You're going to hear him talk about his burnout and how God shattered the lie of I'm not enough, and also how forgiveness opened some doors for him. All I know is that I just loved this conversation with him, and I can't wait for you to hear his story. So let's take a deep breath and dive in. Here we go. I guess to get us started, Richie, you could just share your story, because I've heard your story of going from a youth pastor of a mega church and then going into a different church that had an entirely different feel and view. And so maybe you could just kind of share and start with that.
Yeah, man, for sure. So I got hired to work at this massive mega church in the Detroit area right out of college. It was like 15,000 person, 8 campus church. And they were launching a new campus, and they were basically like, hey, we need you to do double the amount of work for half the amount of the pay. So I was like, all right, I'll do it. And so kind of jumped in, had no idea what I was getting into. But I guess around like the hearing God concept, at that point in my life, kind of where I was walking with Jesus in college, it was more in a theological stream that like God, he spoke through the Bible.
Okay.
And that was really it. And so jumping into this more kind of seeker-friendly mega church, to use that language, there was more openness to God speaking, but it wasn't like, I don't know, it wasn't really taught, if that makes sense. So I walk into that environment, but I mean, it was huge. And I was 21 at the time, which is also hilarious to think about hiring a 21-year-old now that I'm, hiring young guys and have different people on our staff. It's just funny thinking about that. But I remember distinctly every week we would have our first meeting. We'd have Mondays off after Sunday. We'd have youth on Sunday night. And we'd come in Tuesday morning, and all the youth pastors from all the campuses. So there's probably, I mean, honestly, probably like 15 different youth pastors hired. We're all in our meeting together. And just on the whiteboard, you go write your attendance, how many kids came that week. And it was not like for comparison's sake. It was literally just for like tracking data. But it very quickly, even maybe there was some consciousness to it, but I was like, oh, you can see literally on a board, like, am I enough? Like, am I doing good enough? And, I didn't know that was necessarily a bad thing at the time. And so instead of kind of rejecting that, I just dove headfirst into it. It's kind of always been wired of just always this needing to prove that I can do it. And now I know that probably the underlying like lie I was believing about myself is that I wasn't good enough. And so because I didn't feel good enough, plenty of situations in my life where I'll prove it otherwise. I'll show that I can do this. And so just kind of sank my teeth in that and kind of entered this like rat race of ministry growth and pursuing that. And
Did you do
yeah,
sports? Did you do sports?
yes. Yeah. So played sports all throughout high school, not in college, but yeah, same mindset, right? Like if somebody
Yeah.
telling me I can't do it, I'm going to do it, you know? And even with school, it was like I was never like the smartest kid, you know, but
Okay.
I'll find a way to get through this, even if it
Yeah.
was maybe not, you know, I wasn't following the Lord at that time. So there was maybe some mischief going on to get good grades, but you know, I was going to figure out a way to get it done. But yeah, that like kind of that's what I was in. And
Competitive nature. Like even when you're in those meetings, was there any
mhm.
sense of like bantering back and forth or like I got this
Oh
written
yeah.
or
Yeah, you talking like, man, what are you guys doing at your campus? What are you doing? And you know, everything I'm always doing is awesome.
Mm.
So, you know, it was that false ego. But the worst part about that season of life is things actually started to grow numerically. Now, I thought that was what I
Mm.
was supposed to do, but all that did was like inflate the false self. Like, look at me, look at what I've done. And that time too is like, you know, God was opening doors to do more speaking opportunities. I was probably one of the only youth pastors at that time, those first 2 years, that was speaking regularly at the main services for church. And so everything that was feeding this ego, feeding this lie of you're not enough, prove it, was actually getting like high fived and celebrated.
And how are you
So
feeling personally during that?
a weird, this weird inner ache of like, man, I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to be doing, and it does feel good, but kind of still this like, is this really like it? Like,
Mm.
is this like what we're do? Is this ministry? Is this the kingdom of God? As we just
Mm.
gather large numbers of people in a room and then we go home? You know,
Yeah.
like that was I have like distinct memories of like, and again, it was just what I was in at the time, but like doing youth retreats where we do altar calls and hundreds of kids are coming down front. And it's this invigorating like energy rush, but then you walk with these kids over a course of time and you're like, well, that didn't really bring any transformation.
Mm.
So then you're wrestling with like, I'm in this model that's celebrating these big gatherings, big numbers, big show, yet I know what transformation looks like and it's few and far between. And then that's where our mutual friend comes into my story. I meet
Yeah.
Jamie and Donna Winship around 2015. And yeah, just like for the first time, getting a different worldview.
Mm.
Like, and I remember him even like sharing stories about hearing from God and being like, what is he talking about? Like, people don't,
Yeah.
why is he talking about it that way? It seems so out there, so far-fetched. Like, at least not in my experience, like I didn't feel like God talked to me that way. And all those different things, but the invitation around like, God, who have you really designed me to be? Like, who am I? Like,
Yeah.
what have you made me to do? Is what started to open that world up of like, oh, I can hear from him. There are some lies I'm believing. There is actually something he's created me for. And so it was like all this stuff is in my work ministry life is growing, but internally I'm like I'm dealing with this really these two core lies that I had been, you know, I'm not good enough, I'm not enough, and this had been there since as early as I can remember. Like
Yeah.
I have a vivid early memory in kindergarten. Like when I think back, like when it, you know, because these lies that come up, you know,
Yeah.
that aren't how God created us, they started somewhere. So
Yeah.
just you know, in that kind of prayer time, asking the Lord, like, where did this start? When did I start believing this? And it was in kindergarten, and I just gotten the chicken pox and came back to school, and so I still had some like scars on me, and all these kids are making fun of me, and they're
Mm.
calling me Itchy Richie in the corner, which is like objectively kind of funny now that I say it, but I have this memory of me just crying in the corner as this little 5-year-old boy in kindergarten, and it's the memory that comes to mind when it's the first time I felt like I wasn't good enough, and so yeah, just kind of that existed. So that lie, and then you know, really too, just believing the lie that like kingdom impact has to equal numerical growth.
Right.
Like this is how we measure God's movement on the earth. This is how we measure revival is numbers, 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 all of these things. And so I was just buried in that stuff. And so at that time of really learning like, oh, God can meet me in these spaces to like cut through that really began to set me free during that time.
When
Yeah.
you were youth pastor in this large church, what was it like? Did you pray and ask God questions like, how do I do
Yeah.
this?
Yeah.
How do I?
Thankfully, there were some like great people on staff that were kind of, well ahead of on that journey. So
Yeah.
I kind of got, they were the people that brought Jamie and Donna in. So I kind of got plugged in with that quite a bit and just tried to make it, okay, I really want to dig at this, and so
Mm.
I would. It was at first, truly, it was like being guided by somebody else, somebody that I guess knew. I don't know. I have you, do you know the term Sherpa, like
I've heard
the
of that.
mountain
Yeah.
guide? Yeah,
Yeah.
I think of people like that, like these
Mhm.
people, like I haven't been up the mountain yet, but you know the way up, so I'm just gonna follow you, and I will learn the route as I follow you, also.
Yep.
And so that I think of my journey with hearing from God a lot like that, of like I just watched it modeled and was invited to watch it be done, and then you begin to learn it and live it out. And so yeah, it was just being in those groups and in those small groups and settings. It was small groups of people. But then bringing it into my own time with the Lord too, of like, okay, God, what do you want me to know? What is true of who I am? And yeah, it was one specific moment I remember was kind of the catalyst for it all, and praying with someone, and it was getting to that memory I just talked about in
Yeah.
kindergarten, and just asking God, like, how do you see me? And as I'm asking that question, the only thing I can think of is he's staring right at me, and the more I'm looking at him, it's like the whole memory of me getting made fun of gets washed out, and all I can see are his eyes, like eyes of fire and water and greener, like just beauty. And all he said to me was, I've always had my eyes on you.
Mm.
And it was like the language that pierced my heart, that it's like I'm not just more than enough. Like he's always looked at me with favor and love. And for me, like my journey, I didn't start following Jesus till I was 19. So I mean, I'm
Mm.
having this memory come up, and he's speaking this truth to me as a 5-year-old, and that was unraveling too. Of like, man, even when I had, for most of my life, turned my
Yeah.
back on you, wanted nothing to do with you, you never taken your eyes off me.
Mm.
And so yeah, just receiving that, and it was, I don't know how else to explain it other than it went beyond knowing in my
Yeah.
mind. It was
Yeah.
just this experiential transformation. And then that is, I mean, I will still, like, we've talked about this, but like, it's still the biggest lie, I believe. It comes
Yeah.
up
Yeah.
weekly. And
Yeah.
I am put in situations often where it's like, oh man, I don't know if I have what it takes right now. But instead of being like, I'm going to prove it and buck up and like, look at me and
Yeah.
white knuckle myself into it, it's now like confession. God, I can't do this. What do you want me to know?
Mm.
What do you want me to do? And it's usually rooted in like, never forget I am with you.
Yeah.
I'm always with you. I see you, and you're not doing this alone. Let's go do it together. That's simplifying
Yeah.
most
Did
of it,
you
but that's, yeah.
did you like were you raised in a faith? Like,
So, yeah, kind of. I went to Catholic schools my whole life.
okay.
So, family was very culturally Catholic. Like the Metro Detroit area is very saturated in that. So yes and no. Like
Okay.
I knew of the stories, and even Catholicism and what you're taught as a kid is now being in like a more Protestant. It's very different.
Yeah.
Like the stories you learn, the traditions you learn, those things.
Uh,
So my view of God though was like, the Catholic Church makes him very reverent and holy. As a young kid, that was terrifying.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, so God was very distant and up there and holy, and I wasn't. Yeah, I was not that. So that was
Yeah.
most of my view, most of my life of God.
Cuz like
Yeah.
what did your family think of you
hmm
getting into being a youth pastor?
Yeah, yeah. So it was. When I had a huge encounter with the Lord in college. And it was, honestly, during that time, just in high school, playing sports, getting involved in, I don't know, the quote unquote popular crowd, just kind of
Yeah.
just getting into partying and that kind of lifestyle pretty early. I was arrested twice before I was 20 for underage drinking. And I share this joke a lot because my dad said it to me, but he was like, if you would have told us Richie was going to be a pastor when he was in high school, I just would have asked you to please pray he just graduates. Like we just need him to because I was wild. And then that escalated in college. Went to college with some high school buddies who were all in a fraternity, and long story short, just ran that lifestyle to the point of finding myself in a pit
Yeah.
and a real dark place. And it was in that spot where there was somebody I knew who was leading a Bible study. And now I can recognize like that was the Lord leading me into life. But I just reached out and was like, hey, can I come to this? Like I don't know why I want to go to this, but I want to go to this. And I went to this Bible study, and there was a season of life where I'd go to the Bible study on Thursday night and then I'd go out to the bars because I didn't know that was really that bad. At that
Yeah.
point, I felt like it was bad, but I knew I was probably shouldn't have been doing that, but that's just what I was living. And then long story short was these guys in the study were going on a missions trip to Florida. And so they were like, why don't you come with us? And I was like, I actually don't have any plans. I guess, sure, I'll go with you guys. And so I went on this trip, and it was just finally space. Like I was immersed in a week with a community of people who were pursuing Jesus.
Wow.
And it it allowed me to deal with like me running from God. And I remember praying one night. They were talking about following Jesus and how you can do all these outward things for God, but if you don't like give him your innermost parts, like it's meaningless.
Yeah.
And just remember thinking like, I don't even know how to do that. And I remember praying, Jesus, I don't know what it even means to follow you. Because that growing up Catholic, that language was very new to me. Like
Oh
that's
yeah.
not a part of my world at all. So I was like, I don't even know what it means to follow you, but I don't think I have another choice. Like I don't know what else to do. And so just was like, yeah, I'm gonna try this. And so it was that group of guys that taught me how to follow Jesus, just watching how they lived. And
Mhm.
and the big huge the key for me actually, Tyson, this is funny bringing in the sports thing. A few of them were on the university football team of where I went to school.
Okay.
And I always thought like Jesus freaks, like those real followers of Jesus were just like super weird. So I never spent time around them. And I was like, oh my gosh, these guys are like really normal. Like they're great
Mhm.
guys that I have a lot in common with, and they love Jesus and their life is full of life and joy, and mine is not. And
Mhm.
so that's kind of what sparked it. So my parents witnessed all that. And then I think the shift was just over the years of just, because I had at that point, it was 3 years before I decided to go into ministry, that they were able to witness a lot of that. And then this is kind of a cool testimony was I invited my dad on a men's retreat about a year after that. And it was on that retreat that he, prayed to receive Jesus and began following him. And then I got to baptize my dad a few years after that. So some
That's
kind of
cool.
cool family transformation with that. So I think they saw though that I loved what I was doing and was
Yeah.
okay with it. So yeah,
That's cool.
yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
so you were doing the thing at the Megachurch.
Hmm.
You were introduced to Jamie and Donna in 2015. How much longer did you stay in? What was that like, kind of coming into this
Yeah.
new way of living?
Yeah, so we left that church in 2018. So there's around a 3 year time period where
Okay.
we were introduced. And then obviously at the beginning of that, like I was so excited about this stuff. And so I just was like, man, this is how I want to lead our students and our volunteer
Mhm.
teams. And so just began teaching people, how to work through lies, walk into true identity, hear from God. It became a part of how we set up services and training and messages. Probably the best part was just getting a core group of student leaders together during that time period. And so we just went after that, and God began doing some incredible stuff in the youth ministry there. So much so that like it did grow numerically, like tremendously, to be honest with you. But it wasn't. The shift was no longer just to like get people in a room. It was like I was watching these kids, just inviting kids on their sports teams and in their classes and in their schools. And most of our youth group at that time, I bet 70% of that youth group didn't attend that church on Sunday morning. They were just invited from friends, you know? And so there was kind of this little youth movement going on. What I didn't know is way above me at the top of this mega church is there was a theological split going on at the top level of leadership of
Okay.
what do we think about hearing from God and the Holy Spirit and expressing that? Like, how does that all work? And so, long story short, I really have to make this shorter. I'd go forever on this, but we basically got to the place where they were like, this was so a part of our life at that point. 3 years later, and they were like, we're not. This is not how we want you leading. You know, we don't want this going on. And so they basically kicked us out, and it was probably the best thing that ever happened to us because I was too scared to leave, even though I knew that wasn't the right place. And I was probably a little too zealous in my mid-20s too, just thinking like, oh, like I'm just going to change the whole church.
Right.
Like we're just going to live like this. This is what we're going to do. And the reality is God was doing something in me, but he wasn't doing it in this whole community. And that's okay. But I didn't have the courage or the foresight to see like, man, like my life is bigger than what I'm currently doing at 25 years old. Like there's
Yeah.
more to my story. And but we left, and to be honest, through that whole experience of just being a part of the big mega church machine and just seeing the effects of it, and then really like feeling like we were part of this like kingdom movement, and then it gets shut down. We left just being like, I don't know if I want to be a part of this anymore. Like I love Jesus, but I don't know if I want to be a part of like a local church community again. Like I don't know how to do
Yeah.
this. And so I was really, I was wrestling for a while there of, man, do I still want to be in ministry? Because if this is the result of it, giving our lives to something and then we get it stripped away, like that doesn't, I don't want to be a part of that.
What was
And
the argument? Because
mhm,
it's like, I don't know, even
yeah,
numerically, how many youth did you have
yeah,
before versus after?
yeah. It was the first night we ever held youth. There was 13 kids, and by the time we left, there was about 250 a night.
Now,
So
was there a great increase like once you started applying listening prayer?
yeah, I mean, there was one year in particular that it like went from, I don't know, 50 to almost 200. Just like it was just nuts. We were meeting in a basement of a family, of a really wealthy family with a huge house, so they could have this huge basement
Yeah.
because the campus was a portable church, so we didn't have like a building. So it grew so big that we had to find another local church to allow us to use their building for our youth events on Sunday night because we couldn't fit in this house anymore.
And that
So
came
that,
after you started applying listening
mhm.
prayer.
Yeah. So the listening prayer stuff too is what it did probably more than anything was it opened up that world to the Holy Spirit, gifts of the Spirit, some prophetic stuff that I know could be triggering for people, but for us it was just a pursuit of like, man, like God's moving. We want to hear from him, and we want to see what he's going to do. There was kids getting healed. Man, we would have, I remember specifically this very popular kid like not broke. He sprained his ankle really bad at a track meet. And then he came to youth and the kids prayed for him. And by the end of the night, he took the boot off and he was running around the like courtyard area.
Whoa.
And so like there were stories like that happening. And so our church was just very seeker sensitive. So anything that had like residue of charismatic stream
Mhm.
stuff it just felt pretty off-putting. And at this time too, it's probably decent context. That was like, and I know even as saying this might, you know, people will associate this name with something, but like there was kind of the poster child for that stuff was Bethel Church. And
Okay.
so our church was like, there was a lot of like they just didn't want to be associated with that at all.
Right.
And so, which I get, but it wasn't like our youth group wasn't trying to be Bethel Church. We were just praying for people. They were being healed. We were trying to hear from God. And so all that's basically how the reason it split was they felt like I was leading the youth group that was growing in a direction that they did not want to go.
Okay.
So it was like, and it, that was, now that I'm where I'm at now as a teaching pastor, like I understand that. I can appreciate that there's all types of churches for all types of people to express it. Now, I don't know if I would have gone about it the way they did in shutting everything down, but you want your local community to be on the same page going towards the same stuff. And so that's ultimately what split it, was a theological split around what started with the hearing God identity stuff and then grew beyond that to, just further expressions of the Holy Spirit, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So the fear that can exist in that realm is
Totally.
Okay. Once you start hearing from God and you start exploring these other ideas of asking for healing. Oh, look, we can get healed. Let's do more of that, or and so yeah, I do see that. I do see people that is a fear of.
You can't control it. You can't. That's part of like the beauty and what is required to pastor and shepherd stuff like that. Like people are going to take risks and try things that might feel weird or out of the box. Like you want to encourage that to some level, but also like that's the role of like shepherds and leaders, is like, hey, when things get a little wonky, like let's get back here. Let's figure this out together, rather than like shut this down. Nothing's from God because one experience is weird. Like that doesn't even require any discernment. You just, as soon as a red flag goes up, you shut it all down. I think true shepherding is like, man, we're going to work through the mess, whatever the mess looks like, and we're going to find our way forward in Jesus. So yeah, but that definitely was not the case in that situation. It was hard shutdown. So,
and I mean, you said so were there other youth pastors that
I used we for like my wife and I, probably more than anything. But we had some incredible friends a part of that with us. And then even some, like I said, there was 8 campuses. Probably about half of them were pursuing this stuff with us. I kind of got pegged as like the leader of it, which is fine. But yeah, that we would have been kind of that nucleus.
You rebel. Yeah, I can just see it.
I know. One of the other things that I sense the Lord's called me in my life is wild child.
Yeah.
And it was actually it was like something people used to say over me negatively. Like, when I would get in trouble and the Lord's like, no, you are my wild child. Like you're a disruptor. Like this is how I wired you. Just do it with me.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of truth in that.
Like the red flags, like, do you think that that's kind of where we get off is when we start doing things without him?
Oh yeah. I mean, even to be the wild child thing for me is one of the most humbling things, because like I know when I'm operating in my flesh and outside, like, and I'm just riling a situation up or pushing somebody's buttons just to push them.
Okay.
And it's like, that is, I'm like, I got to stop that, But then there's invitations where the Lord's like, no, like I mean, look at the ministry of Jesus. Like essentially most of his interactions with the religious order of the day was to like, I'm going to poke the bear here to get you to think about things a little bit differently. So yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I can see it.
Yeah.
So you kind of were in this space after leaving or being pretty much forced out. You were fired, and what was that space like?
It was really dark. Yeah. I can look back on that space now, and this is like where Jesus becomes so pure and beautiful to me, because like as much as I wanted to run, he was never going to let me.
Yeah.
But he was like, he wasn't going to let me. And so, I mean, but it was tough, man. We didn't know what to do next. I didn't know and so I just started reaching out to different mentors in my life. And so Jamie ended up obviously was one of those. And really my question to him was, man, I'm not sure if I want to go back into local church stuff. This has been my line of work. I feel like I have a passion for it, but I don't want to get burned again. And so, do you know any places that function like in this realm and in this stuff that are trying to pursue this? And he said, actually, yeah, my buddy Derek is down at a church in Tennessee, and they're looking for a youth pastor right now. And
Wow.
so, just again, like God's always doing more than what your eyes can see. So when we get let go from that church, we're in the pit of despair. He's shuffling things about in Tennessee to make room for us to get down here.
How
And
long was it that
oh, not long. So I thought it was gonna be way longer. Thankfully they were generous. They gave us 6 months of severance to kind of figure life out because yeah, there was a huge shift going on. But that happened in July. No, yeah, early July was my last official thing with them. And so I was like, cool, I'll probably not even apply to anything until the fall. And then I connected with Jamie even before I wrapped up my time. And I had emailed our now executive pastor, Gina, and was like, hey, Jamie connected me with you guys. Here's a little bit about me. Let me know if you want to connect. And almost a week after we were done with our church in Detroit, we were on a plane down here to interview, which is hilarious looking at it. And then we ended up moving officially down here that September. So I still have like 2 months to like breathe a little bit, but
wow.
to give perspective, while I was done in July, it was clear in March that I was going to be done.
Okay.
So,
That's the kind of waiting period that was really hard
mhm,
because you knew what was coming.
yes, and it had
Okay.
been made clear to finish out the school year essentially. And so instead of just piecing out, then I decided to finish out the school year with the kids.
And was the direction, even in that period of time when you're with the mega church, was it
Hmm.
like, okay, Richie, you can't teach this stuff anymore?
Yes, very much
So,
so.
like, what was that like?
Yeah, I mean, I had to like send my messages in to get approved during that time period. I had leadership at every service, making sure things were going how they wanted it to go. And then we always ended our last really probably 6 weeks of the school year there, allowing our seniors to give their like messages, what's the
Yeah.
most important thing they learned in high school and giving it to the underclassmen. So I didn't even teach probably the last month, 2 months really. I was leading it, but and everybody knew I was leaving too. So it was kind of like a weird ending to it. Honestly, probably the main reason I stuck on was I had been at that point, we were 9 months into a planning towards a missions trip to Haiti. And so I was the
Okay.
main leader that's what I did in the end of June. We brought 70 kids down to Haiti on a missions trip that yeah, I had already been scheduled to lead, and so
Yeah.
they couldn't get anybody else to like replace it. So they're like, "Can you finish this out?" And so that's why I
Okay.
stuck around most of the reason. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was weird. Like even as
And
I'm
did you
talking to you about it,
notice
like it was funky. Yeah.
and did you notice even a shift or of like what the students were experiencing?
Yeah, that's probably the hardest part. There's a level of that I've had to work through and let go of, but like I didn't handle it all well.
Sure.
And I bit my tongue on a lot of stuff, but I wasn't hiding the fact that I didn't want to leave. And so people knew that it wasn't my decision, even though they were trying to
Mm.
get me to PR spin it in a way of like a mutual parting. And
Yeah.
when I was with those core kids and core families, like I'm not gonna lie to you, I don't want to go. Here's what's happening.
Yeah.
Here's what's going on. So there was quite a bit of pushback, even to the point that there was a core group of parents and families that asked to meet with the upper leadership because they were so upset about it. So
Mm.
that at some level felt, good to have people in your
Yeah.
corner.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was a really hard time,
Yeah.
so and then yeah, just leaving those kids, I think that was very difficult. Yeah.
Yeah. So you had a few months. We're now at Christ Fellowship Church.
Hmm.
And I guess what was the transformation that occurred throughout your time there, because now
Yeah.
you're in an environment where listening prayer is like, promoted.
How we function.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was very jarring. Like I didn't realize when I came down, like I'm speaking now, years removed from this, I had no idea how wounded I was. Like I didn't know how angry I was, how broken I was. And it was pretty, so I get down here in September and my first staff meeting, I will never forget this. My first staff meeting, we're, doing some stuff, but then they had a time of worship and prayer. And I'm watching our upper leadership like on their knees and face worshiping Jesus. And I had this thought, and it was, I've never seen leadership worship. Like I only knew them to critique services and to like sit in the back and watch everything basically, like play out. They were never up. It was so bizarre to like watch leadership like express a love for Jesus, not just talk about it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so that was super jarring. And then very shortly after that, my boss realized, oh, there's a lot of like hurt here. And I've unraveled this as time's gone on, but I ended up going to counseling the first 8 months I was on staff, and they paid for me to go to essentially it was like a spiritual abuse, like kind of cult specialist, because there was so much of spiritual manipulation that went on with the old church that I didn't really realize the depth of it. Just trying to control me and how I was acting and speaking and what was right and wrong was just really weighty. So I had like a lot of mistrust of leadership that I didn't know I had. Like I didn't know if I could trust the people I was working for now. And so that was a lot of unraveling. Then
Wow.
I'm in a well, it's like this is probably like this was a huge thing for me to learn is like even though the new soil I was on per se was fertile ground. I mean, it was leadership pursuing the right things. It still is. Like I'm still like I'm here 7 years later and with all my friends all over the country doing it. Like I know what we have here is like very rare and beautiful. But if I myself as an individual am unable to receive it and step into it, it doesn't matter how fertile the ground is. Like I've got to get planted in it. And there was just so much inner stuff I had to work through. But it was refreshing to know that they were like asking me, "Hey, we want to shift the youth group towards this." Like we had to dramatically shift it. I mean, it had been kind of like a fun and games youth group, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
what most youth groups are. And that's not how I had led ours. Obviously we had fun at youth group. Like you're always
Yeah.
gonna have fun with
Yeah.
students, but it was built on, like we're gonna equip you to hear from God, know your identity. And so we started to shift stuff. And I always joke, like even when I got here, so I went from leading 250 kids a night to I'd come here and there's like 30. And then I always make this joke, like in the first 6 months, I grew it to about 15 or 20 because like half the kids left because it was such a shift.
Yeah.
But that's where things got, what was crazy is I went from a situation where I'm writing my numbers on a board every week at the old church. And now I'm here and I'm watching the numbers dip. And not one time did the leadership here ask how many kids were coming.
Yeah.
And I was so like, don't you care? And the consistent answer was always like, we just want you to get well and like heal and be whole
Wow.
and who God made you to be. That was so hard to receive because I was so deep, even though I had for a few years been trying to like work out of that. I had come from an environment that was just performance and numbers and not this place of rest. Like people talked about it, but like this place was at Christ Fellowship, they were really living it. And so that was a long time to unravel. So that's kind of what I walked into, man. And I think in that season, I just learned so much around like, man, even when you know like the right things per se, right? In quotations, right?
Yeah.
Around identity, hearing God, who he is, replacing lies with truth, walking in all this wholeness. If you're not actively practicing that for yourself and it's just people around you, like you can still be in a very whole environment and walk not whole.
Yeah.
And so, that was,
That's everybody at church.
Yes.
Like that's
Yes.
everybody. And like I just
Hmm.
think about how I walk into church and we talk about being joyful, but I know that no one's truly joyful because they're not
Hmm.
in a place where their fears, their shame have been dissolved in the love of God. You know.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about your experience in going to like a spiritual therapist, like
Hmm.
specialist. Like
Yeah.
what was
Yeah.
that like? What kind of activities or how did they unwind your attachment to right and wrong and just like all the things?
Hmm. Yeah. So thankfully they were super equipped in what I now know as inner healing.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that like they were kind of speaking my language already. Like I had already been
Okay.
walking through that stuff, and so a lot of it was there. A lot of it was, yeah, just me having to admit like how much I had associated the Father God with like dominant leadership stuff. So it was like control and fear and I don't know, like stuff like that. That was probably that was the main thing I had to unravel because it came from I had when this youth ministry started to grow, I was unaware of the split going up at the top. So one of the top guys kind of masqueraded as, "Hey, I'm going to mentor you and pour into you." But those meetings very quickly turned into control. Like this is the
Mm.
right way to think. Even to a few meetings getting yelled at because how I had thought about something about God, and I distinctly remember him yelling at me and say, "That is not from God. Do not." And so, where I thought I was getting an older person pouring into me that I respected turned into like, "Oh, you're just keeping me in check to make sure I don't color outside the lines."
Mm.
And so then there was a ton of mistrust with leadership. So and yeah, I think at some weird spiritual level, I just associated God with this person. And it
Yeah.
was very hard to disconnect because God is all powerful, almighty. He's the leader of my life. This person is supposed to be that. And yeah, so that was hard. But a lot of those practices came through, yeah, just inner healing prayer, working through those lies and in those memories. Yeah. And then I think the other one is just realizing like I was just in my mid 20s, like the guy really helped me just like give grace to this. Like you're so young, like you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
Like don't beat yourself up because you trusted an older person and they hurt you. Like that wasn't your fault.
Yeah.
You- that's the beauty of discipleship is young learns from old, and it was not your fault that you expected and trusted that to be used well, and it was harmful towards you. So I had to forgive myself a lot of that too. Just feeling like stupid that I got deceived,
Oh, yeah.
you know, feeling too trustworthy of people, things like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
S-
Yeah.
So you, it's like you came into the environment where they just kept telling you, we just want you to be whole.
Hmm.
And like to me, I, if that was the way we lived, like I don't
Hmm.
care about your performance. I don't care about your results. I just want you to be whole. Like how much that would change everything with every church and every even like business, like leadership, right?
Hmm.
Is just
Yeah.
you come into work and you're expected to perform at a certain level and do certain things and and to be able to just be met and say, yeah, well, how are you?
Hmm.
You know? And so that leadership towards you, like what was that like to just walk in that and to experience that? Because you said you had a hard time receiving it.
Hmm. Yeah. So I'm experiencing great leadership while I'm unraveling and counseling all the lies. So it's kind of it was like a 1-2 punch into healing during that season. But even to the point of our lead pastor Derek is just like, I mean, he's amazing. I say this often about so Derek's our lead pastor, Gina's our executive pastor, I'm the teaching pastor I got hired in as the youth pastor, but I always say those two at a very real level, those two saved my spiritual life
Yeah.
because they made an environment like safe to fail, safe to navigate stuff. I think probably the most beautiful thing I learned from them was like the need to like not control everything. Like as people are discovering who they're supposed to be, they're gonna go live it out differently than you. Not every situation do you need to like just let it be. And so there's probably some things that I was doing that and trying that like they're like, I don't know how that's going to play out, but because they cared more about me and who I was as a human and who God designed me, they allowed it to express itself. And so when I'll learn because of that, I'll learn from my own failures. I don't need you to tell me I'm a failure. I need you to help me pick up the pieces as a leader when I do stumble, but like I don't need you reinforcing what I already know is that I screwed up.
Right.
So I need you to help me get out of that so then I can be alive and free in who God's made me to be. The other thing, just very practically, was just like time. I remember being stunned that Derek wanted to get lunch regularly with me.
Yeah.
The only time I had access to leadership at that point was just like ministry shop talk meetings. It was never like, hey, let's just go get lunch. Like, how's your wife? Like, how are you guys doing adjusting to moving from the suburbs of Detroit to the middle of nowhere Bible Belt?
Yeah.
Like, like, and then we shared an affinity to and a love for golf. Like, we golfed probably twice a month that first few years I was on staff just to get out and be friends. Like those experiences that don't feel spiritual, those were healing. Of like I can just be. And then to learn for me to watch that Derek was the same person on Sunday morning in a message that he was on the golf course or at a coffee shop, that was a big deal for me. Of like, oh, I can trust you. You're not two-faced. You're not gonna like fake me out one way. And the only reason he was doing that is because he was living whole in who God made him to be. And I remember asking him distinctly, actually, because we used to have this saying at our old church, like we'd have like a team huddle before the services, team prayer, and someone would say something along the lines of like, all right, let's put our game face on. And subconsciously, what that was teaching me is that I was now supposed to be somebody different now that church was starting than everywhere else. Let's put our game face on because church is starting. And I remember Derek just kind of unpacking that idea with me of like, if I know who I am, why would I be any different in any environment? Because this is who God's asking me to be everywhere I am. And just things like that, man, were just so radically shifting from my experience up to that point that those things healed me a ton too. I think in that season, they allowed me to like rediscover healing and truth and wholeness rather than like, dude, why we hired you to like change the game around here. Why isn't it happening? And just being very patient with that. Very patient, not rushing it, I think was a big one. Yeah, I think I mean I will say from like a traditional church model, if you hire in a new youth pastor that you think's going to be great and they cut the ministry in half the first year, like that's alarming.
Yeah.
So, but they trusted there was more going on. And
Yeah.
it did. And over time, like again, that not that what's fun to realize now is like numbers are not what drives our decision making, but they're fun indicators are like what's going on right now. So, I mean, by the time I left youth ministry, we hired another amazing youth pastor, but I mean, that thing, whatever, it was down to 15 or 20, and then COVID hit, which was a nightmare for youth ministry at the time.
Yeah.
But by the time I left, it was around 75 kids,
Yeah.
So, and for our size church, that was fine. So that was a long period of time
Yeah.
to kind of get back there. But yeah,
And I don't know if there were any moments in that period of time where you felt like, okay, I feel whole now. Like, when did you start feeling like
yeah,
the past is past now and I'm operating in the truth of who I am?
yeah. Probably, to be honest, so I got down here in 2018, and so mind you, COVID hits early 2020, and we were only here like a year and a half, and COVID hit. So it was after COVID, I would say. But in the middle of that, my first son was born, and I think that redirected purpose for me. Like it really did. Like life was bigger than me now. It
Mm.
wasn't just about what I like, you know what I mean? And so that was a huge part of it. He was born in late 2019. But I think of just, yeah, discovering like who I am is not just meant for ministry. Like who I am is meant to be expressed as a husband, as a father, as a friend, as a brother. And I think I got to like, oh man, like I'm a dad now. Like that changes things. So that was a huge piece of it. But yeah, it was after COVID, because it was also after COVID where I came to them and said, "Hey, I do not want to leave this place because it is little, it feels like the promised land, the land of milk and honey to our family. It really does. Like it feels like we are in a great spot, but I know I'm not supposed to be doing youth ministry anymore. And I'll do it for as long as you need me to do it, but I don't feel like I'm supposed to be in that." And so that was a healing season for me too, to kind of going back to that Michigan thing. When I left that thing, like I said, I was around 250 kids. By the end of that next year, because I was close to those kids, there was probably 50 or so kids going to that youth group. So 200 kids left. That was because of how bad the transition was, which was in part my fault, but also
Sure.
I'm comfortable saying I think it was mostly their fault with how I left and how they handled that. But I wanted to make sure that this transition went well, like beyond well.
Mm.
So I like resolved in my heart and mind during that season that I wanted to pass it off better than I found it. Not that I found it bad or anything, but just like I wanted to know in my heart, like I'm not just mailing it in to get to the end of the road. I wanna really put some fire and passion into this. And so that's when I knew. So my identity, my core identity, I haven't even talked about this yet, is fire starter, like
Mm.
igniting fires in the hearts of individuals that start movements. And so that to me was the first time again when I was just wrapping up. So this is probably 2022-ish here, where I was like, oh my gosh, I'm being fully myself right now.
Wow.
So I mean, you're thinking like probably 3, 4 years after that whole experience where I finally felt like I can, the other big indicator is I can think about the old leadership and I don't have hatred in my heart. It was filled with
Yeah.
compassion and forgiveness, genuinely. Like I can name that things were done wrong to me and things weren't handled well, but it's not out of a place of bitterness. It's just, yeah, that wasn't good.
Yeah.
That was huge. And that happened around that time frame too. Actually, wild story. This is crazy. I can't believe I forgot this. So we have a staff like just topic on forgiveness.
Okay.
And I had prayed forgiveness over the lead pastor at that other church a billion times at this point. Right. So again, this is probably the 2022 timeframe, I think. And there was someone shared a testimony in staff about how they forgave somebody, and then that next week they ran into him in the grocery store after like 2 years of not seeing them. And so it was allowing them to like express the forgiveness like in person. So I had not talked to this lead pastor since I left. And I'm in the staff meeting and I hear this testimony. I walk through forgiveness again, like I've done a billion times, but just kind of like really giving it to the Lord. And a few hours later, my dad calls me and he goes, "Guess who I just ran into?" And my dad ran into the lead pastor. And then a few hours after that, the lead pastor messaged me on Facebook. And I had not talked to him in 4 years and was like, "Hey, caught up with your dad. Sounds like your family's doing amazing. Really proud of you. Blah, 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 blah." And it was like something that I forgave in the spiritual realm, like unlocked something in like the physical realm that like we were now communicating after like a 4 year hiatus. It was so crazy to me. But those were like little markers where it was like, yeah, like I'm free of this stuff. Like I can move forward. I don't have to hold on to it. And then really to tie it, probably the most beautiful thing about it was last year, that church invited me back to a young adult retreat.
Mm.
And I was a little apprehensive, but they wanted me. This is so crazy. Churches cycle through this. They have all new leadership there. A lot of the guys retired, but I led sessions on hearing from God, working through
Wow.
the story of Genesis, of just trying to equip people very practically. Like they were like, hey, like don't make it very mystical and charismatic, supernatural, but just practically, like how would you work through this? So to me, that was like this final stamp of like, hey,
Wow.
we're gonna be okay, So that was crazy. Yeah,
That's cool.
yeah.
What was the difference between forgiveness before and forgiveness this last time?
The only thing I can think of was just hearing that other testimony of like giving me hope that like
Mm.
there can be reconnection somehow.
Okay.
Because it wasn't like I wasn't thinking about it any differently. I wasn't any less desperate to like really be free of it. And I was, you know, I've walked through forgiveness a ton through this. So it wasn't like I was
Yeah.
reluctant of it. I don't know. Maybe it was just the timing
Yeah.
finally. It's hard to put into words. It was just one of those like, real marker moments that the Lord was like, yeah, like you're alive and free. Go move forward. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I don't know. We're just so impatient with
Hmm.
transformation. And,
Yes.
and so I think what's hard, and this is what I find with some people that I work with, it's like they quit too soon, or like
Hmm.
the lack of the evidence that they're wanting or
Hmm.
whatever that they're seeking for isn't there. And if it's not there long enough, they just, you know, think, okay,
Hmm.
I guess this doesn't work. Like using it like a tool that should
Hmm.
work.
To
So,
me, that's why community is so important because
yeah,
there's been seasons where similarly it's like, man, I'm not feeling it or I'm in a rut or whatever. And it's like, because I'm in an environment where like everybody around me is pursuing these things, there's going to be moments where some people are struggling, but then you've got friends or my wife or whoever that's like, hey, like be reminded of who you are. Like, I think that's why when you're walking into transformation, when you're trying to learn that journey of hearing God, who He's made you to be, like you can't do it alone because you're not gonna always have the energy to do it alone.
yeah,
You're gonna have situations where you need people. Sure, there's gonna be moments where you'll pioneer it and you'll do it, and it'll be the thing you go after and you get other people in it with you. But there's a lot of moments, man, where you just need people to hold you up when you're struggling.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that's why the community piece is so vital to me. Like kind of what I was talking about earlier, like here. The soil here allows me to keep growing when I might not always have the passion or energy to do so.
yeah. Or
Yeah.
when it seems like the sun is blocked.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
it's
man, there's
awesome.
so many things we could have
Yeah,
got into,
thank
like
you.
even as I'm unfolding this, it's fun. It's fun thinking about all that and the journey. I think what you said is so true though, Tyson. Like be patient, like because the just takes time. I mean, seriously, as I'm recalling this, and we're talking 7 to 10 years
Yeah,
of working through this stuff. And it's never linear. You can know all the right steps and it's just doesn't work like that.
yeah.
And that's the beauty of Jesus, is the beauty of the Holy Spirit is he's always with you and he will guide you into all truth.
Hey, friends, before you go, I just want to give you a moment to reflect, okay? Because it's one thing to listen to a great conversation, and it's a whole other thing to receive exactly what God wants you to receive through this. So I invite you to just take a deep breath and even close your eyes if you can. And just ask, Lord, from everything that I heard in this conversation, what do you want me to know? just listen for the first thing that comes up to your heart. Lord, what do you want me to take away from this? So whatever you received, I just invite you to listen and respond. The most important thing is what God is trying to share with you now and what he's inviting you into. Now, if you struggled to receive or you just want to connect further, I invite you to check out the links in the description below, okay? And if what I'm creating is serving you in some way, I would love for you to subscribe on YouTube, because this not only helps more people find this channel, but it honestly supports me in being able to create more and help more and more people start hearing from God. So thank you again for being here. And I just bless you as you follow what God shared with you today. All right. We'll see you later.